Welcome back to History Class with Dr. W and our continuing discussion of Vietnam. In the previous lecture, we talked about a period of division and chaos in Vietnam in the 17th century. In this lecture, we're going to talk about a group of brothers who came from a village called Tay Son, who rose to power out of that period of chaos in an event known as the Tay Son Revolt. Beginning in 1771, three angry brothers rode a wave of socio-economic discontent to power across Vietnam. What factors opened the door for this new threat to rise? Well, there are quite a few, and we've listed them here on this slide. For one, the Nguyen had struggled to generate sufficient revenue. Related to that, foreign trade had declined, especially in the 1750s. To compensate, leaders had begun raising taxes, which sparked discontent. As a fourth factor, bimetallism contributed to rising inflation. As trade with Japan and China suffered, the supply of copper for making coins dwindled. The Nguyen ultimately turned to a cheaper zinc substitute and forced the people to accept it at the same rate as the much scarcer copper. Rather than selling their rice for cheaper zinc coins, farmers began hoarding their rice, leading to the fifth factor, hunger. The rice supply dwindled and hunger spread. The colonial government began to enforce harsh demands on rice farmers in the south, in the Mekong Delta, to compensate. This exacerbated the discontent in this region. And finally, spread thin and far from the capital city of Hue, government officials failed to adequately assess the level of unhappiness growing amidst the people. In 1771, in a small village called Tay Son, located near the port city of Quy Nhon, about midway between Hue and Saigon, three brothers launched a revolt against high taxes and government corruption. The revolution spread like wildfire and is known as the Tay Son Revolt. Moving away from the capital city of Hue, the Tay Son essentially cut off the south from the colonial power center, pursuing Nguyen leaders farther and farther south. In 1777, the Tay Son executed the Nguyen monarch in Saigon, striking a major blow against the Nguyen. Declaring victory, one of the brothers, named Ngoc, moved the capital city to Viaha, near Quy Nhon in 1778. For a time, there were three Vietnams, including the Tay Son, the Trinh in Hanoi, and what was left of the Nguyen in the far south. The Tay Son continued their march, now turning their attention to Hanoi and the Trinh in the north. In 1786, they conquered Hanoi and now controlled all of the north and central portions of Vietnam. Another of the brothers, whose original name was Hue, but adopted the name of Quan Trung, declared himself emperor over Dai Viet, although fragments of the Nguyen state remained in the far south. While the Tay Son felt they had achieved victory, their satisfaction was short-lived. In the far south, a tenacious Nguyen leader named Gia Long continued to work against the Tay Son. Initially, his efforts focused on political and financial mobilization, rather than military. He assembled an impressive array of allies in the far south, including military aid from Asian and European governments. As the Tay Son movement slowed in the north, Zhaolong launched a full-blown military uprising out of Saigon in the south, sweeping northward and toppling the Tay Son government. By 1802, Zhaolong had defeated the Tay Son and ruled over a truly unified Vietnam for the first time. While the nation was unified at last, it had come at a great price. One Vietnamese poet wrote of this period, "There were proud men who followed glory's path. They warred and hoped to conquer all the world. Why talk about the heyday of their might? Remember their decline, their fall, and grieve. Killed young, they've left no heirs. They drift unmourned as headless ghosts that moan on nights of rain. Defeat or triumph lies in heaven's scheme. Will ever those lost souls escape their fate? For nearly 50 years, Zhaolong and his heirs, Ming Mang, who ruled from 1820 to 1841, and Thieu Tri, who ruled from 1841 to 47, each attempted to bring control to Vietnam, which had long been divided and racked by civil strife. Jialong's son, Ming Mang, was a different kind of leader. Born in 1791, he was too young to remember the period of intense warfare. He was a firm believer in a civilian-run state rather than a military one. Ming Mang sent Vietnamese officials abroad on fact-finding missions in hopes of determining what methods might be most successful in ruling Vietnam. Sending emissaries to China, India, the southern lands of Indonesia, and elsewhere, he also learned of another potential threat: European expansion. The British, especially in the era of the Opium Wars, were expanding their colonial control in the region and posed a potential threat. Internally, Ming Mang ruled harshly, convinced it was the only way to bring control to the tumultuous region. So let's talk a little bit more about these three leaders and their different styles of leadership. The leader known as Nguyen Phuc An adopted the name Zhaolong. He ruled from 1802 to 1820. His method of rule was flexible. He turned to the Chinese model of Confucianism, issuing a new set of laws and codes based on Confucian social relationships. He established new Confucian academies and schools, and greatly improved the capital city of Hue. But while Zhaolong unified the country, he understood that his control was fragile. After all, he had risen from a population of discontent himself. Behind Confucian relationships of deference and fealty often lurked resentment and even hatred and vengeance. Zhaolong attempted to win over his potential rivals by including them in positions of power and prestige within his government. He also maintained a militarized form of government, with a strict chain of command all the way down to local leaders and warlords. Nonetheless, it was difficult to maintain consistent peace when he ruled over a land so much of which he had conquered. Zhaolong's reign did see an increase in centralization and state control. He clamped down on social and religious unrest, built new roads, dikes, canals, and other improvements. He constructed a major new road to unify the country, installed a new postal service and standardized currency, constructed many impressive fortresses along the coast, and built nearly 1,500 ships for war and for trade. In our next lecture, we'll continue this discussion of the reign of Zhaolong, and particularly his heirs, including and most importantly, Ming Mang.